that.
Oh, okay, yeah. So he was born in 1972 in Sicily, in Gramicelli, Sicily. So that's a province of Catania, and so he came to the U.S. when he was like 1 years old, and so his parents were already older when he was born, and so anyway, he grew up in Bath Beach, Brooklyn, on Bay 16th Street, and so that was actually on the corner of 1724 Bath Avenue, which was consigliere Anthony Sparrow's headquarters, known as the West End Social Club.
Now,
And
didn't he grow
so,
up in the same building with Jimmy Calandra?
yeah, yeah, that's what he did. Yep. And so it was that Bath Beach neighborhood was predominantly Italian neighborhood. It was obviously well known for its mafia stronghold, and this was an area that was a recruitment center for younger Italian American kids that inspired to become gangsters.
And so let's talk about the Bath Avenue. And we know that Jimmy Calandra does the Bath Avenue. He's a lot of stuff about them. And
Hmm.
we're touching on this for the simple fact that this man was released. And I
Yep.
heard, and I heard something. People said that all these guys were a bunch of rats, but
Hmm.
two of them did a lot of time in prison, and then Paulie G got killed. So I
Right.
think that the whole group of them didn't turn out to be rats. A couple of them did,
Yeah, so Joey Calco and then Jimmy Calandra,
and that's
informed.
informants. Informants.
Hmm. Yeah,
Okay.
and so yeah, and then Fabrizio, spent over what 20. He went to prison in 2001, so about 22 years, and so he's still in a halfway house, so it's probably going to be a little bit more time that before he's totally free, but yeah, I mean, he didn't rat at all, and so yeah, I mean, just a couple of them were informants.
And pretty much two of them didn't rat, and or two of them didn't become informants.
Right.
And and here they are right here. You're talking Fabrizio and Tommy Reynolds.
Yeah.
And Tommy Reynolds is looking at 7 years, about seven
Yes.
years before he gets out. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's correct. So yeah, he did get a reduction in his sentence, and so yeah, he's got another 7 years to go.
And so Fabrizio just got out. So he didn't he do over 20 years then?
Yeah, yeah, he definitely did that. So did over 20 years.
Now, from what I was understanding, when they filed papers on him originally, the prosecutor, they filed that he stabbed and beat and burned his victims. He was a very brutal
Yes,
guy,
yes.
uh, and yet he was involved with the Shemtov. Didn't he have like conspiracy? He was involved with the
Yeah, yeah, he
Lady
was.
Shemtov.
Yeah, so according to the New York Times, he pled guilty as as part of that. Even though it was Tommy Reynolds who pulled the trigger, and we know that
It was Tommy
that
Reynolds and
Jimmy
Jimmy
was
Calandra at the
there.
door.
Yeah,
But
and Chris
yeah,
Masella
but
was
it was
was the
plotted.
driver.
It was
Hmm.
plotted. People
Yeah,
were involved because they thought there was money there. This guy owned
yeah.
porn shops, and they thought there was going to
Hmm.
be cash there, but they never got in the house to find out. That was
Right.
when,
Yeah, and he pled guilty. So Fabrizio pled guilty, and so yeah, he didn't actually go to trial per se on it. Just he pled
it's-
guilty.
and out of all the Bath Avenue boys, he was actually made. Is that correct?
Yep, yep. He is actually made in 1998. So he was made in the Bonanno crime family. He was sponsored by Anthony Graziano.
Oh, Anthony Graziano's and okay, here's Anthony Graziano right here. Okay.
Yeah.
And so, but he had issues in prison too. I mean, didn't they beat someone up in prison too in the yard and hurt him real bad?
Yeah, so I know Gangland News had reported, I believe this was in 2016, that there was a brutal attack. There was a Gambino associate named Albert Christie, and so his jaw was broken and wired shut, and after an attack in a recreational yard there in Fairton, New Jersey. And so no one was arrested, but they believe that there were several folks that were involved in the beating, including Fabrizio
Right.
DeFrancisci. And so they said that Chrissy was nearly beaten to death. He was hospitalized. And then um, also in the Gangland article was kind of interesting. They said that the mobsters believed that this guy's ex-wife, Danielle Christie, was one of two new women who were added to the cast of the Mob Wives TV show for the coming season. And so what we know is that Christie had suffered head trauma and possible loss of an eye in what prison officials believe was a planned attack in a prison yard during a regular morning recreation period.
Okay, so we got two guys here. Tommy Reynolds is doing a lot of time. He got some taken off, and then we have
Yeah.
Fabrizio,
Mhm.
and so there were five main guys that started the crew. Is that correct?
Yeah. So the main, five of them, and seven of them actually got their tattoos or whatever, but
They're
the
members.
five of them were Polly G was one, Jimmy Calandra two, Joey Calco, I believe, was three, Tommy Reynolds four, and Fabrizio DeFrancisci was five.
Okay, okay, okay. So, do we have any idea how long he's going to be in this halfway house?
No, I don't know how long he'll be in there, so that information we don't have, but I'm sure it'll be a year or so. He's got to basically get reintroduced back to society. He's still fairly young. He's was born in 72, so yeah, he's like 51, 52 years old.
And when him and Tommy Reynolds, when they actually took they actually were surprised with the amount of time that they were sentenced to,
Hmm.
especially Tommy Reynolds. I mean, they got a massive amount of time for, we're talking New York here. And
Yeah.
usually, a murder, you get 20, 25 years.
Hmm.
And so I believe Tommy Reynolds got like 47 years.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, a lot of it was just the brutality of the murder, and then being that the victim was a woman, and there was just, it's just also it involved a robbery as well. So it's kind of multiple charges, or multiple acts of criminality together. So that's a reason that it was more.
And so now you hear that he's made and everything, that he's
Hmm.
the one Bath Avenue guy that was made.
Yes.
But the Bonannos are in disarray right now. I mean,
Yes.
I don't even think that he would be able to become part of that, especially the way they monitor you now.
Hmm.
I've heard people say, "Oh, he's a made man. He's going to go back there." How? Yeah, I mean, if you're on probation and they
Hmm.
watch you so thoroughly, uh,
Right.
this is where I just don't see it happening. Do you?
Yeah, I mean, I don't see it either. I mean, what he does have going for him that he's young. So I mean, he could obviously have 20 or 30 years or more left in his life, and so, but at the same time, being able to be around other felons, that's going to be next to impossible. Now you have you don't he doesn't have necessarily, what I don't know is who is he still on the street today, who is he close to, because a lot of the people that he was with back in 98, they're dead,
Or in
or
prison?
are in prison. So I mean, who does he have left? So I'm sure that maybe he'll have to have a conversation with Mancuso, the alleged boss of the family, but he's kind of in his own problems right now.
Right. And so I don't see many people. If you're doing 30 years and you get out of, 25 years and you get out,
Hmm.
I mean, why would you even want to go back to that life? I mean, when he was a young guy when he went in, he was pretty much he was still very young when he went in. What would be
Yeah.
this ain't like the 80s and 90s where these guys would come out and
Hmm.
rejoin their group.
Yeah, exactly. And we know about, like, Joey Kalka, where he went down to Florida and he got in trouble for and he wasn't made or anything, but he went to the program and ended up having a pizzeria down there and got in trouble.
And Joey Calco was the one that pulled the trigger. He was with Tommy Reynolds, but he's the one that pulled the trigger on Paulie G, right?
Yeah, exactly. So it's
I guess it's okay for shooting someone in the head, as long as you weren't involved with the robbery.
Yeah.
Yeah. So the guys that took a plea, they all did like 5 or 6 years.
Right. Yeah.
Not
exactly.
a plea. I'm sorry. The guys that became informants.
Right.
They did about 6 years.
Few years. Yeah.
And the group of them, it was a very large group of guys that used to hang around these guys, but there were 5 main guys. And
yeah.
and
that's what's confused. A lot of people don't realize that. You had actually 7 that got the tattoos, but there was 5 main guys, and then in addition to that, you had people that hung around with them. You had even Chris wasn't really part of them. I mean, he did work with them.
Paciello?
Paciello. Okay. Yeah, was actually just did work with them. So
because he was involved in the Shemtov murder also.
Yeah, as a driver.
And he went back to his life, and
yes,
matter of fact, he was able to bail out at one time during that whole thing because, as we know, that Chris was around people with a lot of money.
Yes, exactly.
Okay, so what else would you have to say about this?
No, I mean, part of it was that just from a historical standpoint, what was interesting about that is really, Paulie G was the leader of this group, and so he worked real close with Joe Benanti, and Joe Benanti was friends and close to Anthony Sparrow, and so what was happening is Benanti, it's just interesting when looking at him, he was this old school gangster that was actually, even though he was in Brooklyn for what he was doing with Bath Avenue, he was originally an Elizabeth Street guy. He's from Manhattan, and he's related to the D. Palermo brothers from the Lucchese family. But he was one of these guys that really didn't make a lot of money. He wasn't necessarily a known tough guy, but he didn't make a lot of money either. But he was just close to Anthony Sparrow. So Sparrow really had this guy Benanti be the kind of the primary person that the Bath Avenue crew would work through. And then later on, that Paulie G becomes friendly with Tommy Patera. But no, it's just kind of interesting, where Fabrizio kind of how he was brought into the Bonanno family, and he was the one in '98 that ended up getting made, and people thought that even though he did some gruesome crimes, it was
he was kind of like the forgotten member of that crew, and but the guy never became an informant.
He didn't. But what surprised me about him was that, they're trying to say, I guess maybe they're comparing him with Tommy Reynolds, but they're saying that, this guy, at least Fabrizio, kind of had the right attitude. He had what people would want for a made guy, and the problem they had with Tommy Reynolds, besides that, he's not Italian on his father's side, is that the guy was a nut. I mean, he was violent and would do anything. But Fabrizio, they're saying, was kind of the one that wasn't as violent, but he still stabbed, beat, and burned his victims. They said there were at least 3 acts of brutal torture involving a blowtorch, a noose, and a cigarette lighter. So that doesn't sound like someone to mess around with.
And Paulie G got killed because there was a truce made with another street gang, young street gang.
Yeah, 20th Avenue that was affiliated with the Colombos.
Yeah, and so Paulie got mad, and he wound up getting him killed because They were killing it. Listen, these guys were on the street killing the hell out of each other, shooting each other, and doing some crazy stuff. And
Right.
people don't realize that there were several streets back then that had these gangs that were.
Oh yeah, yeah. I mean, they did, and you remember what we talked about. You know, there's Bensonhurst on one part of Brooklyn, and then Bath Beach area, and yeah, you had crews, you had these gangsters in training from, pretty much all of the families. And so, if you remember, also during this time, most of the other families, their leaders were going to prison, and so Anthony Sparrow was kind of the key guy there in Bath Beach. And so yeah, I mean, he just didn't. The thing was, obviously, he was appreciative of Paulie G. Paulie G did a piece of work for him and would have been in line to get made probably in '98 if he had, or maybe even before but he decided he was impatient. He felt that Sparrow should have been on his side on that war with the 20th Avenue crew. But the problem is it was drawing too much attention. There were too many murders. There were too many crimes, and so um, you know he had an agreement with the Colombos. And they said, stop this. But Paulie G wasn't happy, and he wanted to go to war with these guys, and Sparrow wasn't going to deal with it, and so he pushes Sparrow, and that was his death sentence. That was Paulie G's death sentence.
Yep, and the guy that shot him in the head is down in Florida.
Yeah.
That's the great thing about being informants. It's you can say what you want about Jimmy Calandra, but he didn't kill nobody.
No.
I mean, you got some cold-blooded killers out there that. I mean, he was at the doorway when Shemtov got shot, but
Right.
he wasn't. I don't believe I'm defending him, but I guess he was probably the one of the group. He was probably the one that didn't murder nobody that we know of. That we know.
Yeah. Yeah, he shot people, but yeah, I know that he was. Yeah, he didn't. He wasn't expecting what happened to Judy Shemtov. He didn't. Tommy Reynolds. That wasn't supposed to happen, but
murder's murder. If you make a plan,
Yeah.
if you make a decision to rob someone's house,
Mhm.
I mean, sorry, all four of you guys are involved, and because of the fact that it's a conspiracy to murder, basically.
Yeah, and so what I don't believe is that this was necessarily condoned. This wasn't the robbery itself. Involved Chris Paciello as a driver and all that, but I don't believe that it involved any sanctioned. Um,
No,
maybe Benanti knew about it, but I don't think so. And so I know Tommy Karate had said in a letter that he would have never gone for that. That was something that, basically they would have been killed for doing that to Judy if they were on the streets.
all right. Well, we covered that the best we can, and we just put this out there. I appreciate you doing this, James.
Yeah. We just wanted to, really talk about that. It was interesting after what 20 years that Fabrizio is out of prison. He's in a halfway house, so he's still got a possible long life to go.
I got to call him young because he's young, 10 years younger than me. So I'm going to say the young man got out of prison.
Yeah, well, let's hope he does. Maybe he can be a productive member of society. I don't know it'd be interesting to see if he's going to get back involved in the life. I don't know what options he'll have, but
I don't see him coming onto YouTube because of the fact that he is not an informant. We don't have guys on here that other than informants, but you just never know.
Yeah, he'd be I mean, if he would.
Oh, if he came on here, dude, and he just started his own show,
Yeah,
and he's not an informant, he'd be like the first real guy that wasn't an informant on here.
Yeah,
the first made
exactly.
guy that or didn't like Michael Francisci. There's a lot of there's things that he won't admit to that we know he did. So he would be the first. So I don't see it happening. But you know what? if you want to make a living when you get out, why not?
Yeah, I mean, I think he'd definitely get a fine. I think that we wouldn't mind interviewing him if he would come
Yeah,
on, you know.
a lot of people wouldn't.
Right.
But you know, when you think about it, though,
Hmm.
they beat a guy down in the yard and almost killed him
Right.
because the rumor. Well, this is a rumor. Let's put it.
Yeah.
Was out there because his wife was going to. They thought his wife was going to be on Mob Wives.
Right, exactly. And this happened just in 2016, so that's why, it's surprising that, he would get some time off, after being fingered as part of that beating on Albert Christie.
Yeah, well, he actually filed in 2000. He was rejected in 2020 to
Oh,
get,
okay.
uh,
Mm-hmm.
and then he had to go through, and then I guess they let him out now.
Mm-hmm.
And, but that's just very interesting stuff. I appreciate
Yeah.
you doing this with my man.
Sure.
Okay.
Thank you so much.
Okay, and everybody, thank you very much. I hope that you enjoyed the information. We can't give it as good as people that actually know them. We're just doing our best, and hope you like it. Take care.
Yeah.
Thanks,
Thank you.
James.